Hi, my name's Jonathan Hicks. I'm back at the Dice Cup, and this evening I'm joined by
Steve.
Andy.
Tim.
and we've just finished playing Altiplano, I think is how you pronounce that, which is essentially the sequel to Orléans, if you're familiar with that. It's a very similar kind of game. It's a bag builder, so you're going to be acquiring various tokens. You can see at the bottom here. I'll just focus that, which start off in your bag. So you draw a set number of tokens each turn and you sort of fill them up on here, and then you decide how you're going to allocate them. So there are lots of different kinds of actions that you sort of take on boards out in the middle, but you have to plan and decide what actions you're going to take. So I might decide to stick this 2 wood up in the harbour space, because in the harbour space I can spend 2 wood to get a boat. Travelling is very important in terms of how you actually move around and take the actions, and you usually have to allocate food to these spaces here, you can see, to sort of travel. And I might want to extend my road. I'll explain what that does in a minute. So you plan by allocating these things, and then one at a time each player kind of goes around and takes one action each, but they have to be at the right location. So I was yellow in this case, and I started off at the forest, and from a previous turn I've allocated something in the forest space. I can actually spend my wood, so it kind of goes to your discard pile. They have these nice little tray things here for the discard, and then that lets me get a wood. So I would take a wood from the forest and stick that in my discard piles. And these things are all going to go back in your bag later, so you're kind of acquiring more tokens as you go through the game. And then if I want to travel, I can use my wagon, which lets me move up to 3 spaces. So I might want to go 1, 2, 3 spaces, and while I'm at the harbour, I could spend my 2 wood, which again goes to my discard pile, and I might get a boat. And the boats get you a little bit of endgame scoring, and they also let you get some unusual resources. If you wanted to get glass, for instance, that's another way of getting some of these unusual types of tokens that would then go into your discard pile. And then maybe I can go to the road section, so I'd use another one of my wagons. Each of these wagons you have to kind of acquire by spending money, which is another resource in the game, and that lets you do more travelling as you go through the game. So again, I'm going to move round to the road section here, and at the road I would spend my 2 tokens again, but this time it lets me advance here, and this is how many tokens I'm drawing from the bag each time. So now I can draw 7 instead of 6, so that's very helpful. So you're doing that each turn. Just very quickly in terms of the different action spaces, this is how you increase your hand limit, as I say, you draw. This is acquiring various tokens. A lot of the spaces you'll just hand in one thing for another, so you can use your llama or alpaca. Everyone keeps correcting me. It has the most amazing first player token in the world, and it's an alpaca. You can trade it in for food, or you can trade the alpaca and food for wool, etc. There's various kinds of trading things. You're getting the boats and fish from this space. Here you're getting either stone, or you can craft it into jewellery. This is like a contract thing. So at this site you can pay money to get contracts, and if you then stick the appropriate bits on there, you're getting some end game scoring. And then finally to mention is the house action. When you get these houses, there were some victory points, but it also increases the value of certain goods. At the end of the game, you see how many tokens you have in your bag, in your discard pile, wherever, and you're getting points for them. So some of them are worth more than others. You can see the glass is the best, it's worth 4 points. And then finally, the last kind of action you can do at the house is you can store goods. So at the end of the game, you kind of have to start at the bottom here, and you're trying to fill up these rows. And if you manage to fill up a particular row, then you're getting a certain number of points. But only the same kind of good can go on each row. So there's quite a lot of points from lots of different things, from storage, from the value of your tokens, from the value of your contracts. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. What do we think?
It's clearly designed by the same guys early on. I think there's so much similarity here, but I believe this is a better game for a couple of reasons. The buildings, the little addition things you can get aren't as overpowered as they are in Orléans, because they make you do more actions more efficiently, but you still need to get to the place to do the actions. So if you get all these different buildings that like all these different actions, you might not be able to get around the board to activate them all every turn. So you've kind of got to specialise. But if you specialise, you take away all the resources. So the fish went really, really early, because Andy and I were fishing. So you have to diversify a bit, but if you diversify, you have to travel around to do it. And that travelling kind of fixes the travelling in Orléans, which just seemed like tacked on. The other thing is you start with different tokens. So on your player board here, this is my player board. It gave me an action I could do that no one else could do, which is pretty good. And it told me what I started the game with. So I started the game with 2 food, a fish, and a stone of some sort, and a money. Jonathan didn't start with any fish, but he started with an alpaca. an alpaca. I'm like, I spent half the game trying to find a way to get an alpaca. Eventually got one and then started to build my engine up. But you can go throughout the game here without actually getting a particular type of resource, because you never get to the point where you get that building or get that ability to do it. And you have to tailor your strategy to diversify that. So in terms of kind of diverging people's original strategies, Orleans didn't really do a good job of that. Everyone could kind of do the same thing at the start. It forces you to diversify, and we all went down a completely different route, so I really like it.
Okay, Andy?
Yeah, basically, I think Steve said most of what I was thinking, really. Yeah, I really like this. I've played Orleans a couple of times, and Orleans I never quite liked. I thought it was okay and would play it again, but the way the things come back into your bag is very different. This is more of a deck builder. So when your bag's empty, you reload it, whereas Orleans, you take tokens once you do the action and it goes back into your bag. Orleans, you can sort of store more stuff on your board to keep it out your bag potentially. And the travel, as sort of Steve said about the travelling, didn't really seem to work in Orleans. It seemed a bit tacked on, and but this, yeah, early on in the game, I found it really hard to move to where I wanted to be, because I never seemed to draw food when I needed food, and also probably had less food than I should have had for efficiency. But yeah, I really like this.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, it's a great game. I mean, I feel bad comparing it to Orleans, but obviously they're so similar. In Orleans, you just feel like you're pushing up these different tracks, whereas this feels far more thematic. You're a trader and you're getting these goods and you're making different contracts so you can get more points and more money out of it. I mean, it's a lot thinkier, I find, because you've got the aspect of having to travel around effectively what is a rondel to take different actions with your planned out goods. The only thing I would say against it is it's very multiplayer solitaire, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like if it were more, essentially it's a race. You're racing until these goods are gone, you're racing to try and grab the good tiles. The tiles are the only thing you really care about, that you would move especially to go and grab. If it had something in it that made it more like a race game, that made it more important to get each thing, it would be far more engaging, because you'd be hanging on everything that everyone else did and thinking, don't go there, and then grabbing something. So I think it's a really good game, and if it got some expansion support, then it would only be even better.
Okay, rating out of 10?
Probably an 8 for now.
Okay, Andy?
Probably a 7.5 to an 8.
Okay.
I think you've got to be careful who you play it with, I think, because of the multiplayer solitaire and the fact that if one person's slow, it's simultaneously planning, but if one person's slow, it could really drag the game down a bit. So on that basis, I'm going to rate it an 8. I still like the game, but you've got to be careful who you play with, I think.
Okay. I really enjoyed it. I will be a fan of Orleans anyway, and I do think this is better. I think they've summarised very well the different reasons why it's better. It really feels like it's very integrated in terms of that travelling mechanism. You have to think very carefully about where you are. It's not just, oh, I've got enough tokens to do this action, but is this action close enough to the other one? Have I got enough food to be able to travel around to do all the different actions that you want to? I found that really interesting. It is multiplayer solitaire, really. But personally, I didn't mind that at all. I was very engaged the whole way through, planning what I want to do. I would look occasionally at what other people were doing, thinking, oh, is he going to beat me to this? Or in terms of how fast they're getting their engine going, because when the game ends, there's a few different things that could potentially trigger the game end. And there were several points when someone could have ended the game, but sort of chose not to, because they felt like if it goes one more round, they'll hopefully improve their score more. And I really needed the game just to last one more round, and unfortunately someone else ended it before I did. So you're paying attention to a certain extent, but not that much. But in terms of my enjoyment of the game, I'd be on an 8.5. I thought it was great. All right, thanks for watching. That was
Altiplano.